Bonjour à vous.
Well, good morning, everybody. I would like you all to be seated. We are very sorry for this little delay. This is not what we wanted. However, we are very pleased to be in Toulouse for this third Common Good Summit, which is organized by the School of Economics, Challenge, Les Echos, Parisien Événements, and also with the support of our partner, local partner, La Dépêche, the newspaper. It has been titled Sacrifices and Opportunities, and you can see with the climate that sacrifices, it's 60 billion euros in terms of investments till 2030, which will have to be found and will have to be all included, households, economies. So we have to find these 60 billion euros that will be recycled in the market or in subsidies to make sure that the transition works well. So during these first day and tomorrow morning, we'll talk about artificial intelligence, mobility, inflation, food, and plenty of other things. And based on our experience from last year and motivated by the welcome committee that you may have found on arrival, we have decided to open as much as we could the windows, not only the curtains, but with the presence of the social, with associations and people from various round tables. And despite the workload, which is very big, the program that you can see in the challenge paper or in the La Dépêche supplement, this is the second page on the central notebook that you can cut out. And then at the end of the session, there will be questions from the audience that you can ask. And there's a QR code which will be given and displayed regularly. And then thanks to the Dépêche newspaper, we will have the reactions from what we call the citizens platform. So we know, ever since Jean Tirole and Christian Taulier have said that, we know the tragedy of the common good, or rather the tragedy of the common goods. If I'm to take up what Mr. Gaulier said, the private interest is not aligned with the collective interest. And I would say that the presence of all the partners who have made this common good summit possible, and I'd like to thank them for that, well, the attendance of all the partners shows that we want to come closer if we cannot get aligned. This is what we are trying to do at TSE and at Challenges. This is what seduced our manager, Gabriel and Jean Tirole, and to organize this Common Good Summit, to open up this third edition. And as an introduction to our local partner, the Occitania region, we have received from the Élysée, the government, we have a short message, and Emmanuel Macron, President of France, decided to have a long address. If you remember, for the first edition, that'll be a little bit short, as I leave the floor to the President of the French Republic. Thank you to you all. I'm very pleased to see you for this Common Good Summit, and I had the opportunity to express myself a bit longer. And of course, I could describe the agenda for France, which we are pursuing for all the common goods items that are threatened, because for the last 6 years, what we have tried to do was an efficient multiculturalism, and, you know, the climate change, the biodiversity, and also the protection of the child, because we wanted to have an internet which would be better mastered and more human, and we are also fighting for peace. And given the aggression of Russia in Ukraine, and we want to preserve the common good, which is the Charter of the United Nations, I'd like to say a few words only here about the summit which we're going to organize in June on the 20th to 22nd. This is a new covenant, financial covenant, and the common good is at the very heart of this particular covenant, because many poor countries or developing countries with intermediate economies or emerging countries are faced with, at the end, some form of collective abandonment on the part of the richer countries. Because we have, or they have, and we also have to face up with the various challenges, like the fight fight against poverty, which is a priority and which should remain such, and also the climate change fight and its consequences, and also the fight for biodiversity, and also funding the consequences of this climate change, which is what we call the vulnerability in terms of climate. Now, all this combined makes financial needs that are very new for all these countries. But today, we haven't got the right instruments, we haven't got the right investments, be they public or private. And if we talk about common good, we have to talk about this particular challenge, because part of the richer countries have to re-examine their instruments, their investments, and the mobilization of their development banks, and also the financial institutions from the private and public sector to help these countries to meet these challenges. This is a moral as well as political necessity in order to face this poverty, to face conditions that are contrary to our own way of humanity, to transform the climate and maintain biodiversity. And also, I wanted to make you aware of this particular summit on the 20 to the 22nd of June, which is a real example of this particular thing. And this is what I believe in. So we have a duty relative to all these countries. We have the interest to take into account this is our future. So I won't be longer. I wish you a very good summit, and I'd like to say you that France will continue to be mobilized for the common good, and in France and at the world level, in order to make sure that the planet will face with all its challenges. Have a nice summit. So that will be the only session on which we won't have any questions, because the President remained in Paris. So as always, with the President of the French Republic, we have noted the meeting in June in Paris for this financial covenant, and we come back to Toulouse now, because I'd like to call to the rostrum Thierry Cotel, who is the Vice President of the Economy, Employment, Innovation and Reindustrialization Committee from the region. So you have the floor, sir. I'm very pleased to leave it to you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. And I would like, on behalf of Carole Delga, I'd like to thank all the organizers for this particular event, because we brought our support ever since the first meeting with Challenge, TSE, the ECO newspaper. It's a pleasure to be here to attend, and with all those who accompanied. And it reminds me of my youth with this newspaper, La Dépêche. So I'd like to thank as well La Dépêche Midi, who's a partner. And also to get started with this, I'd like to take up the sentence by Jean Tirole about his common good presentation. Act for climate and equality, invest in education and research, guarantee the sustainability of the public actions, necessitating a long-term perspective. Now, in terms of long-term perspective, it has been missing over the last years, because we abandoned what we consider as essential in order to preserve the common good, or at least to try for this common good to prosper. And so this is the industrial sector, which is indispensable for a country like France, because the economy depends very much on that. Now, France hasn't got its industry in its DNA, in its imaginary side of life, and there have been some problems with the industry, but it has accelerated. There's been a deindustrialization for the last 15 years. The results are here, and the French economy has really gone down, and industry only represents about 10% of the gross domestic product, against 15 or 19% in Italy or Germany. And by the end of it was 290 billion euros for the gross domestic product, much less than in Italy and Germany, and a deficit which is 160 billion in 2022, whereas the Italians have an excess of 60%, and Germany has got an excess of 63 millions. So there are problems at all levels. And so we can see all the effects of that. Now, the French have seen this as a very pessimistic view, and it's very good for the extreme parties only, and it's very bad for the common good. Now, without any industry, the funding of the welfare state cannot be maintained, and the common good for the nation, particularly with the public services, the health, the education and mobility, this will have to be taken up. And this can only be done if the economy, through its growth, is going to generate the necessary wealth. Now, reindustrialization in the various sectors and products will only be done on the various perspectives. It will be ecological, it will be robotized and eco-responsible, it's electric. It will be maintained by research with the support of the nation, so that it could be at a European level, at least equivalent to that of Germany, which is less than that of the States, Japan, or Southern Korea. It shows you the challenge that has to be met in France and in Europe. Now, topics are many. We have to be very good on quantum computation, so the use of hydrogen or artificial intelligence. Reindustrialization can only be done if we have the skills and if we can also master the scientific topics, be they theoretical or practical. The youth should really look at the scientific trades. And of course, this economic policy is a national issue which is shared by all the citizens, but also supported by the territory. So the examples in this area, the Alès area, shows that following the some decline, there are new companies that are coming in. This is the common work between the elected representatives, the services of the states, and showing that we can mobilize all the collective energies regarding the Occitania region and within the framework of the sound skills. This is very important because our strategy has been voted last year for the transformation, ecological transition for the coming 6 years, includes the following topics. We want to increase our energy and food sustainability. We want to increase our local economies. We want to have the skills for tomorrow. We want to make sure that this is one of the first scientific and technological regions in Europe, and we want to offer these conditions for success. We can do this on all the topics, on all the skills, regional skills, in concert with including all the economic and economic actors. The climate, the inflation, artificial intelligence, mobility, food. These are the roundtables that will be proposed, and it will be varied, just like all the challenges that have to be met. Now, the region is mobilizing on the climate because we want to be the first region with a positive energy in 2020 and 50. With the production multiplied by 3 in terms of electricity and consumption diminished by 2, by half. And so this is what we want to do. Now, these are the efforts that have to be done in order to maintain. We want to look at mobility in the larger sense of the word, and we want to look at dwellings. And there are many projects. We have a strategy about hydrogen. We have a strategy for the rail with tests that are done, and with the innovating hydrogen-powered train. And we could multiply all the examples and look at all the imperatives in terms of change, climate change. And there are problems with the education, with the equality, access to the digital, or to health. I'd like to stop my intervention here because I'm sure that the political action as well as the public actions should be inspired and find in all these various topics all the actions that are efficient in the short and long terms, with some political changes that will not be always approved by all, but this is the democracy, and so the debate, always a debate. It has to be contradictory in a sense, but then there's a choice and action for common good. And so thank you to you, all the organizers, to make sure that this is done. And I'd like you to have very fruitful debates. And thank you for all the organizers to have chosen Occitania region to organize this particular convention. Thank you.